Well, my thoughts are with American service members who are in Qatar, who are serving across the region. And I have to say, Joe, I don't know that the administration properly prepared to protect them. I heard the press conference over the weekend with the Secretary of Defense, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and yet this all seems to have unfolded without what I would have expected to be the proper level of both coordination with our allies, coordination across the government. This was one of those shoot from the hips and let's see what happens next. And as you mentioned, obviously, there are some reports coming through that airspace has been closed above Qatar. We have a big base there, a base that is crucial for U.S. Anti-terrorism operations, for work securing, stabilizing the region, which obviously has been rocked in recent years. So this is a very concerning development.
Boy, that's for sure. Bring us in the room, Brett. What's the conversation like, and what's the level of concern coming off a weekend that we thought we'd never see?
Well, I would say a few things. One, you have to be careful in these circumstances. The Trump administration liked to play up how they had some diversionary tactics. Well, Iran also can play at that game. So we may well see a direct attack against U.S. bases. But at the same time, Iran's real strength is in its asymmetric capabilities. We've heard word from the Department of Homeland Security about sleeper cells. There are other ways in which, whether it's on a cyber front, whether it's through other entities and allies that Iran still has, that they could strike not only against the U.S. homeland, but what worries me, Joe, and what I have not seen a lot of mention of at the Pentagon from the Trump administration are other American interests beyond just military bases. We have our embassies. We have just American citizens who are traveling around the world. And there was an alert put out today earlier by the State Department to warn Americans. But all of this, Joe, comes back to how did this make us safer? Why did this happen now, especially when you had Iran at the negotiating table?
Mm-hmm. Looking at that warning that came from DHS earlier today, the summary of the threat to the United States. Brett, bring me in the room that you're in now. What are you hearing at the NATO summit? What are world leaders most concerned about? Because this could develop in a very dramatic way over the coming hours.
It could. And look, I've spent the day here at the summit site chatting with some of the journalists who are getting into town. Obviously, the leaders arrive tomorrow. But, what is on the minds of a lot of folks, especially our European allies, is why the heck were we not coordinated with when it comes to these kind of operations? Because they also have service members that are in the region. They also have businesses and economic interests as well as just their own citizens. And so this is a summit designed to coordinate between allies. Trump obviously has acted in a very unilateral way, has been dismissive of talking, let alone actually collaborating with other countries. And yet, when you get into these kind of conflict situations, you absolutely need to have that kind of collaboration. One example of it is, the U.S. begging China to help them keep the Strait of Hormuz open because China, as you were just mentioning before I came on, is a big buyer of Iranian oil.
Yes, wow. Well, Brett, you don't seem terribly impressed here. This is interesting to listen to you talk through this. And I want to mention another headline. The Wall Street Journal is now making news here that Iran is moving launchers for possible attacks on U.S. forces. Missile launchers are being moved right now. Laura Sullivan reporting from the Wall Street Journal that the missile launchers are being moved into place for an attack on U.S. forces in the Middle East in response to the attack on 3 nuclear sites over the weekend. DoD tracking a credible threat to U.S. forces now in the region. Brett, it looks like this is going to happen. It's a question of when. What is it going to feel like after? There's so many questions about the day after. What happens next and what the administration is prepared for. It's going to look differently and it's going to feel differently once Iran makes its next move.
It will. And let me just bring listeners back to that moment when the Iranians retaliated after the assassination of Qasem Soleimani. There were ICBMs that were launched against U.S. bases in Iraq, and Trump at that time tried to play down the effects of it. But as later reports showed, a lot of our service members did suffer pretty traumatic effects from those attacks. You worry the scale of this one might be quite a bit larger. Having served on those bases, there are obviously places where our service members can go to be protected against an incoming attack. But an ICBM is a massive weapon, and one that obviously can do a whole lot of damage. And again, Joe, I come back to this point. Why did it happen now? What was done in advance of it to ensure that we got, for instance, service personnel out of the region? Do they all have to be there right now? Do the assets that we have on the ground have to be there right now? And as well, why did we choose only, if we were going to engage in this military operation, to drop the bombs against the nuclear sites and not against some of these missile launchers and others that would retaliate against us?